my body would feel pressure and discomfort. I remember I would just go there and sit with the trees and I would just feel better. Plants are our elders. Connection between us feels really good. The body talks differently in nature than with humans. I went to work with Shipibo, indigenous shamans. They could understand more of this language of the body, and they were saying, no, here, connect with the plants and they're gonna teach you. Wherever we land, we can build relationship with that place. It's that piece that I think is missing for us right now.
Welcome to the Vitalist podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist.
Welcome to The Vitalist. It's Dr. Sera here, and I'm with Tracy James, a spiritual herbalist who is going to guide us into developing a deeper relationship with plants and the living world. So welcome to The Vitalist, Tracy. We're super happy to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Sera. I'm very happy to be here.
We're going to be talking a lot today about how we communicate with plants. And I would love to define that relationship. Like, what do we mean when we communicate with a plant? And then more importantly, I think, what does it mean to listen to a plant? Because I think in our culture, we can kind of take a very cognitive perspective on that and think that it's going to show up in English words that we hear. So I would love for you to give your perspective on this relationship with communicating with plants.
Yes. I think to start off with that, I might zoom out a little bit. When we think about communicating with plants or nature, and I know you are a vitalist, so you get this, that we're actually one with a larger life force intelligence, right? And that we're all tapped into, that we all that moves through us, that beats our hearts, that is what connects us. And so I say that because plant intelligence and our ability to communicate with plants can happen through all different kinds of portals and channels of that intelligent interconnectedness. And so more specifically, I think about it, I think about the 5 elements. There are many versions of the 5 elements, but the way I think of them is, earth, which would be communicating through our bodies, our somatic sense. I call it phytosomatics, our ability to connect with the intelligence of nature through physical sensation. And just kind of a knowing inside your body, or maybe places in the body like that you might associate with the chakras that can have, different kinds of meaning from certain areas of the body. So that's like the earth element version of how we might communicate. And then there's water, which is, you can think of as emotion. It can be our kind of more of a sense of fluid, adaptive intelligence that we have. But plants can very much speak through our emotions. So we can connect in through, you can sit next to a tree and you might have a certain feeling come up as you do. And so you can think, oh, wow, this is actually the feeling that my body has when in connection with this plant or this tree. And that's a kind of communication. And then there's fire element. And so fire can be, there's a big range there with fire, but our sense of compassion and heartfulness and that warmth we can get in our chest. Also our sense of passion and purpose. So sometimes you can commune with a plant and you can feel that warmth, that kind of oxytocin-y, connective, belonging, juicy sense of love. And you can also feel more activated or connected in with your own sense of purpose. Like, oh, right. Like, here's what I'm about. I don't know if anyone's ever had that where you can go for a walk in the forest, and then you come back feeling more clear. You feel more, maybe even focused, more aligned with yourself. And then air, the air element, we can think of as mind or vision. And, so we can just think, like we can commune and connect with the plants through our thoughts, so we can all of a sudden have inspiration or certain kinds of thoughts that we hadn't been having. It's like, oh, right. Okay, that makes sense. And you kind of get like a download, for example. Or you can just be having a telepathic conversation, where you're talking to a plant and there's just a real, just like I'm talking to you kind of a conversation. And then there's ether, which is space, the allness. And that's a way that we can commune with plants and nature where you can feel like you're just one with all of it and you are merged with that sentience and that intelligence, and you just know things and you're kind of with their knowing. And that is a very beautiful way to experience nature as well, because it's like we're remembering through being the fullness of our own connectedness. It stops being so much of like I'm a separate thing than this plant, and we are more communing.
I've been reading this new book, and it's all about the senses and how in the West we're very much focused on the five senses. But if you go into different cultures, they focus on different senses, and thus you experience the world so differently. And so it seems to me that you're helping people attune to different senses that are within the intelligence of the body to create this connection to plants, not as an it or a thing, but being in relationship with the sentient intelligence of the plant. So I'm so curious, how did you get into this work? And then how did you first attune your senses to be able to be more receptive to the sensations that were in your body?
Well, the first thing that just comes up for me as you ask that, and I get a little bit of an emotion with it, is remembering being a kid and having a hard time at home. My parents were fighting, and we were, living near this stream and these woods, but it was still kind of a bit urban. So there was like some trash around and stuff like that, but it was still like I could get to, to a stream in nature. And I remember I would just go there and sit with the trees, and I would just feel better. I would just feel balanced, and I would feel like, okay, everything's going to be okay. And so that's the kind of original reference point I have for this kind of communing, is associating nature as being so supportive and regulating and balancing. And I would notice when I would go back into, my family or into human dynamics, that my body would feel kind of pressure and discomfort in certain places. And when I would go out in nature, I wouldn't have that feeling. And so in a lot of ways, my whole life has been about trying to figure out, like, what are all these feelings, and what's the body saying, and how come the body talks differently in nature than with humans. And so that, kind of is a bit of a roundabout way to get to like how it got started, because it's just that curiosity, I guess. And it's not even curious, it's like a need to understand what is being communicated here? Because I can tell that there's something wise. And so I went to, big, jump in time in my 30s. I guess it was like 2009. I went to the Amazon jungle and I went to work with Shipibo indigenous shamans to work with the plant medicine ayahuasca. And I was just really blown away by the way that this tradition and the incredible intelligence of their what they've learned, their wisdom, that they could explain to me. They could understand more of this language of the body, and they were saying, no, here, connect with the plants and they're gonna teach you. And so it just was transformational for me on so many levels that I can't even describe, to realize that plants are our elders. They're our ancestors. They were here long before us. They've seen it all, and they can help us come back to understanding ourselves and understanding our relationship with nature and life and why we're here. So I think it's like this drive I've had to understand the body, and then this just incredible joy to realize that the plants get it. And so they're really able to help us humans navigate things that we've really forgotten.
What do you think has created that disconnect from nature in our culture?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much pin it to the industrial age. I mean, I think on some level there's just been a sense that we need to kind of leave the outdoors, try to shelter ourselves from nature, that, at a level, we're trying to, like, nature's almost the enemy in a way. Like, there's so much fear around nature, and rightly so. There's a lot of scary stuff, but I think how we actually are in right relationship with nature and how we stay safe with nature is by understanding it. It's like this is something I learned from the plants, the things that we come to understand the features of, and that we dig into, and that we engage with, we can come to know and be in relationship with, and then we are, safer from. We understand if there's a snake, we learn the kind of snake it is, its behavior patterns, where it likes to hunt and what it likes to eat, and then we learn how to, avoid it.
So how would you invite someone to begin a daily practice with, even, I don't know, we can suggest a house plant, potentially we can chat about it, but how would you invite a daily practice in the modern world to enhance this sense of belonging and home and place, and I think most importantly, relationship? I mean, I think it always comes back down to your relationship to people, places, things, that sort of idea.
I guess let's just pause, and all the listeners, if you could just for a second, look around you, or just see what you notice. Is there land just right outside where you are? If it's all concrete, maybe there might be a plant in the space. Just like check out, where is nature right now? Like even the littlest plant growing up through a crack in the sidewalk, just where is that life force expressing itself? And so just taking a moment to notice that, take that in, even if it's looking out the window, and tune into, that is nature, just active and alive and well. And also reaching out, right? Like reaching up, like in relationship with the sun. There's just connectedness happening through that, through plants. Like they're always connecting, stretching their roots out into the earth, into the soil, talking to the soil, talking to the fungal networks. So just in our sense of experiencing that nature is right here doing stuff, engaging, active. And as you tune into your own body, feeling your heart, just the breath, just this intelligence that is operating autonomically without our trying to do it, that there is a life force happening. And we're working so hard in our lives to, get it done and check it all off the list and provide and do the things. And yet there's things happening that aren't from us efforting. Like there's an aliveness that just is. So I would say as a start to let ourselves tune into that this is right here. And you might think, well, I really want, more friends, or I want a romantic partner, or I want this thing that I don't have or something, and it can feel so hard to feel the absence of something that we feel would make our lives better. But I think actually it's the kind of slowing down and tuning into the presence of what is here. So we want to come back to that. And yes, then we can do more stuff. Like we can have, I've got tea, tulsi, they're plants. I mean, I think rose is such an amazing plant to start with, because you can find rose petals somewhere, or, at the store if you want to start with that, or if it's the time of year where you can engage and find some rose petals and make some tea. Oh my goodness, and you can sit and just take a minute and just tune in, like, hello, rose, like this is an ancient spirit. I mean, can you think of all the millennia of humanity that have connected with roses? Roses are ancient. I mean, they found roses in like Colorado that are, I don't know, bajillion years old, like these ancient plants that have survived. And roses are so much about compassion, heart opening, but also they have thorns. There's also like boundaries, helping us learn like what to say no to. Nope, I'm not choosing that. I'm not choosing that kind of behavior for my body. I'm saying no to that kind of person so that I can honor myself and not just give too much away. I can allow myself to restore my energy. Rose is so beautiful for supporting us in that, for helping us reconnect. You're talking about anxiety. Oh my goodness, right? It's like so much energy going up into the head. So rose is helping us bring it down into the heart, grounding ourselves, anchoring. So, oh my goodness, it's endless plant allies. They're endless allies to help us.
A lot of people take supplements, adaptogens, ashwagandha, whatever it is, then it's almost like they have a relationship with the supplement and not the plant, if that makes sense. And so even remembering that a lot of these things that we're taking to get rid of our anxiety or help us sleep better are plants. And if we read the ingredients, and instead of like deepening our relationship with our cortisol manager supplement, we're deepening our relationship
with, like chamomile, like as a plant spirit. that's helping us with that. Tulsi helps with reducing cortisol. Yes, but it's just like from a different place, and you and asking, and this is the thing that's so potent is that the plants do work with us, so you're yes, and you got the supplement, but to be able to relate to it as a plant, to say before you take it, hey, I could really use help with coming more into my heart, feeling more calm and ease and peace in my body. Would you help me do that?
When you were in the Amazon, how were you taught? Because are you familiar with Philip Shepherd?
No.
Okay, so he is an embodiment teacher up in Canada, and I recently read his book and I've been following his work, but he tells this story and I think it's quite humorous because it's so obvious, but he says, like, if you go into the Amazon and you're working with a shaman or a medicine woman, or they know what plant to use to cure certain things, like if you have a headache or nausea or whatever. And he was like, could you imagine, in our culture, it's very much trial and error. Like if you have a headache, we have 400 plans. Like, let's start with number one, take this for a headache. And like, let's say that this person does and we give it to them and they die. Then it's like, does anyone else have a headache? Because I have the second plant to try,
It's so like, true.
Right? But how did these wise people in the Amazon who have so much knowledge, like how do they share how they receive the wisdom from the plants so they know what the uses are? Because obviously it wasn't trial and error. Like there was a communication with the plant so that they knew how to use it to support the people. But like, was there a story you heard? Or
Oh yeah, I mean, they talk about it for sure. I mean, there are different avenues there. One is a person learns from maybe their grandmother or their mother. So there is kind of a handing down of knowledge, through lineage. And in addition to that, people will say that you just go out into the jungle, right? And you sit and you listen. And so some people have their pipes, like, take my pipa, go out with, mapacho is the tobacco of the jungle, and so the tobacco spirit is such a powerful, powerful spirit. And so you go and you puff on your tobacco and you ask, the tobacco kind of bridges you to some of the other plants, and you ask for guidance, like, how can I help this person? And you come from your heart, you genuinely want to help, and then you will be guided. And you don't need the tobacco, but it's part of that tradition. But any of us, we can go and we sit, and sometimes it's days that someone will go out. And I think a big key to what I've learned from them is it's faith. And one plant that I worked deeply with, did a plant dieta with, it's called ahosacha, and she taught me, to have faith and confidence in your heart. And so when you ask the plants and the spirits, you go with a sense of kind of a certainty that you will receive an answer. And however long that takes, because I think we have our own time of chop, chop, hurry up, plants, like I need my answer. But there's plant time. And plants have their own way of doing things. And sometimes their way of doing things requires a level of patience on our part that kicks up things inside of us that we need to work on and release to be able to receive the wisdom that we're asking for. So, but oh yeah, I mean, the main way that indigenous healers that I've worked with find their remedies is by sitting and listening to the plants. Sometimes it's also bathing in the plants. You will pull in the flowers and leaves of certain plants that you already have a relationship with and put them in a bath. And ideally you do this outside where you leave the bath out in the sun for a few hours, so you you break up these plants and flowers, and you, as you're doing it, and you're kind of rubbing them in your hands in the water, so they're really kind of distilling their essence into the water. And as you're doing that, you're asking, hey, I'm working with this person, and I'm really wanting to understand more of how to support them, or, can you help? Or for myself, I'm wanting to heal something in myself. And so you're just connecting, and you're kind of rubbing the plants into the water, and then you leave it in the sun for a few hours, and then put it over yourself with a bucket, and you just run it over your body, or you just sit in a tub with that. And oh man, it's incredible. There's one story of a teacher I had, and she had lost her husband, so she was kind of became a single mom, and it was very difficult for her. So her local healer said, you need to be doing these plant baths to help you heal and help release your grief and help you be able to move forward. So she started doing these plant baths, and then she started hearing the plants talk to her, and they started guiding her and helping her process her grief. And then they started telling her that she should be a healer herself, so they started guiding her with what plants to use with people that were her neighbors. And so she started her own path, not from a lineage. She was Shipibo, but her parents weren't shamans or anything like that. But she just was taught to do it from the baths.
So if people don't have a strong relationship with certain plants, where do you begin with that?
I think a place to begin is that faith and confidence, to say that even though you don't know the practicalities of the thing, each of us is just built to be in relationship with nature. Like it's hardwired in. So I think to start from a place of faith in that the more we can kind of spend time in nature, the more we can like downshift our stress, and, to be able to kind of be more receptive to it. I think it's less having to have a lot of skills around it. I mean, there are definitely skills and things to learn and whatever, but I think it's less about that than it is about it's like we need to kind of get out of the way of it. And I think in a way, it's like the noise of our modern lives, like constantly listening to things or watching things or always thinking about the next thing to do. There's nothing wrong with any of the things. It's just like how much of it how much of the noise we're creating, and what would happen if we turned that down.
You mentioned the spirit of the rose.
Oh, yeah.
How, obviously there's a difference between the spirit of a tree or a cacti or a rose. How do you define that?
It's a lot like being with humans. Or you can have a litter of puppies, but pretty soon you're going to be able to tell each puppy has its own certain life force and signature ways of being. And I think that is for all of us, humans, plants, nature, squirrel. I've got a couple of squirrels that hang out in my yard, and it's hilarious. And they have their different things. And one of them likes to make all kinds of noise, and you kind of observe and listen, and you start to feel the unique signatures and ways of expressing that the plants have. And so sometimes I have a meditation that I do where I guide myself or other people through a garden gate. And so in the front of the garden is all kinds of cultivated roses, and just so beautiful. And you just feel this incredible compassion and warmth as you enter this garden. And as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the garden, it starts to get more wild. And so you kind of go deeper and deeper into connection with the original, ancient, organic spirit of rose. And then so you kind of find a spot near an ancient rose bush and you sit there and you allow your roots to sink down into the earth and blend with the roots of that spirit. And you meditate like that and see, what happens, what you feel. So I do encourage, with the plants that we might work with that are cultivated to be able to, or kind of altered or genetically, or, things that people do to plants or whatever, to also invite the ancient spirit of that plant to come through.
How do you feel plants are sensing us? Because I feel like maybe in our culture, there's very much an extraction. I want to take. And so people show up to the Amazon and it's almost like the plants are a commodity to serve, whatever the pain point might be. But how do you feel the plants are sensing us, and what do you feel that we're giving to plants?
I think for many plants, and there are different kinds of plant spirits, but essentially there's a benevolence, and there's a sense of, it's like a synergistic experience for them when we as humans come back into our own natural, our own kind of organic way of being and way of relating. Like we're all built to connect. So connection between us feels really good on both sides. And I think for some other plants that you might think of maybe as like master teacher plants, there are some plants and trees that have a kind of investment in seeing us evolve. And so they help us and they test us and see if we will step up. But yeah, this is kind of like thinking about like your grandmother or something like that. What does your grandmother get from being your grandmother? There's a kind of a joy that comes when you can see this younger being evolve and grow, and, you can teach them things and contribute to them. But we also want to take care of our grandmother, right? And support her, make sure she has what she needs.
I once heard a story about, if a bird were to fly in your backyard and you're like, oh, that's just a blue jay. You just categorize it by its species, versus whether you try to begin to become aware of its individual personality traits like you do with your squirrels, and you maybe give him or her a name, and that forms this rope between you and the bird. And every time that blue jay comes back into your yard, it strengthens that rope and that relationship. And now you want to protect him or her. And I feel like it's the same thing with the trees or the plants in our backyard. If we can identify him or her and what makes this oak tree separate from that oak tree in the way that she's growing or moving or those sorts of things, and you give her a name, you form a very different relationship. Thus, one like your grandma. Like, I would do anything for my grandma. Right? And now if I see this tree in my backyard, like my grandma, we're going to have this custodial like relationship. Like, I want to make sure that you have everything you need, versus it's just an oak tree and it's like a category in my mind.
And I love what you're saying, because I think that the exact way you described that relationship, that way of relating, is the difference between the dislocation that modern people feel from land and the dislocation that our ancestors experienced from land, right? Because like we've always as humans moved, right? Like we started in Africa and then we went all over the place. So it's not that like our ancestors just only stayed in the same place forever. They didn't, they moved, but they were able to build connections with the spirits of the land and place and plants where they went. And I think that's kind of the key difference with us modern folk, is that like we're forgetting that wherever we land ourselves, our bodies on this earth, that we can build relationship with that place and the squirrels and the blue jays and all the beings of the oak trees. And, like it's that piece that I think is missing for us right now.
I feel that. I mean, that's something that we chatted about when we first connected. I moved to the desert from prairies. And when I first landed here, wow, like it's been taking me a minute to feel at home here. However, if I close my eyes and I picture the sunset in Saskatchewan where I'm from, or being in the forest around our family cabin, it's just that brings me home. But again, it's this meditative experience with nature that I think makes you feel home moving here. It's the land that makes me have a sense of belonging. And so finding that again in the desert has been both a joy and a challenge.
There is a challenge to dislocation, and I think there's something powerful about acknowledging that. Like it affects us to be grounded in a place or be born in a place and then be removed from it. I think it affects us more if we're, removed from it by force than, if we choose to leave. But still, there's an impact. And I think acknowledging that and then being able to say, there is actually a journey to building relationship in a new place.
I think when you walk through a forest as an herbalist, you probably have a deeper relationship to the history of plants. You know their stories, maybe more of their spiritual lessons or wisdom that they can share with us. For someone who's not an herbalist walking through the forest, do you recommend a book, or how can someone start to deepen their understanding, I guess in a cognitive sense, of plants?
So many places you go, someone has written a book about the plants of your area. Yeah. And I think that's a great place to start. And so I would say really tune into what's right around you. And if you get drawn to a plant, you're on a walk in the woods or something, or you see something on the sidewalk, you're drawn to it. Okay, like look it up. Like first, maybe just try to, if you can, sit near it and see what you pick up on, but also like learn about it, get to know it, and see if you can touch it or explore it. If, learn about it. If it's poison oak, it might not be great to touch. Like learn about these things in nature. We learn the nature of things. And then what happens is you start to build, because it's like you start to walk through the forest, not as like, oh, I know what that plant is. I know what that plant is. It's a friend. Like, oh, hey, like, what's up? Like, you're just kind of like, these are your friends.
There's an app, I think it's called PictureThis.
Oh.
But you can take a picture of the plant and it will tell you its name and if it's poisonous or if you can eat the berries or a little bit of its history.
That's great. Yes.
Tell us about this monthly coaching program.
I really love seeing what happens with people when they are working with plants as a practice. Right? Like it just becomes something different. So what we do is we go from the new moon to the full moon, and we work with a certain plant. And a lot of the plants we work with are ones that many people will have near them, or like rosemary, rose we talked about, calendula, mugwort, these incredible tulsi, beautiful plants that are really have been connected and incredibly supportive of humanity. So we, just explore different ways, because everyone has their own pathways. I mentioned the elements. So how do you learn what works for you? And I really love doing it in community. So that's what we're up to. It's called Reverence. And also to say that, I have a 7-day guided meditation series where each meditation is focused on a different plant spirit. So I also, will offer that to your listeners too. So you can just, explore that for yourself, with meditations.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy. Where can people follow you, connect with you?
My website is livingelemental.com, and Instagram, I'm at Coach Tracy James.
Well, thank you. This has been an absolute honor.
It's so great to connect with you, Dr. Sera.
If you like this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.